This is the Spritz Girl Mindset Podcast, and I'm your host, Courtney Young. If girlhood is a mindset, this is where we practice it out loud and unfiltered. We're healing, we're yapping, and we're doing it with spritzes in hand. Here's your permission slip to be soft, messy, and magnetic as hell. So grab a spritz, grab a seat, no small talk, just the real stuff. Yay! Welcome to the podcast, Cindy. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very, very excited. It's my first podcast, so
Oh my God.
I'm very, very stoked.
Well, I'm so stoked to have you here. I love your work online, and I'm so excited for my audience to get to know you a little better. I just wanted to go ahead and start by offering you the floor, seeing if you wanted to tell everybody about who you are, what you do, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. My name is Cindy Ransom. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I've been practicing for a little over 7.5 years, working with individuals and mostly families, couples, and I'm an anxiety specialist. I also work with people with OCD. And just recently, May 1st, launched my coaching program, which is called Volume Up Coaching, which I'm super stoked about. And that right now is going to be geared towards parenting and support group for parents. And it's specifically geared towards millennial kind of parents, which is that old school upbringing that doesn't work with the new tech kids, and yelling less and connecting more, and all of the sort of like tidbits to be able to just enjoy parenthood instead of surviving it. I'm sort of expanding things out. I'm very excited about it.
My goodness. So I'm so excited to get into all of that. I am not a parent and I don't plan on having children, but I know so many people who are, or a lot of my friends are in that stage, having children, starting families. So I know this is really going to resonate with so many people. And I'm so excited to get into it.
That's great. And I work with so many of people who are like specifically within your age range. Like, I don't know what it is about like the young adults, or like it's always like the adolescents that are just getting ready to graduate high school or just in college, or, just finding their new jobs, or those transitions, and kind of like that young energy. And I always end up, just like harnessing that energy, which is, I'm sure, why we ended up being connected. So
I love it. You've
excited
got like a
to.
very vibrant energy. So it makes sense that those are the generations you're connecting with.
Oh,
My podcast in itself and my coaching business is all about empowering you to be the ultimate people person. So, what does that mean? That means I want to focus on fostering genuine communication and connection with the world around you through wellness, girlhood, and authentic storytelling. Those are my like main pillars. I feel like there's a lot we can get into with that, but I
yeah.
do want to start with just this authentic storytelling and kind of breaking the mold section. So, getting honest about what we inherited and what we're choosing to shift is kind of the vibe that we're going to go for here. So, what inspired you to create Volume Up Coaching and start to share your own story so openly?
Well, that's such a great question. As a marriage and family therapist, I've gotten the wonderful opportunity to be able to help so many different people. And, backstory behind that, I was a television producer when I lived in California. So I was geared towards, my job was completely about like, I'm going to get you to trust me in
Mhm.
a short amount of time. You're going to tell me all of your secrets and we're going to make a show about it. Right. And so that was my skill set as a producer. And I always felt like it was empty, because once you're done with the show and you finish asking all the questions and you reunite the people and you move on to the next show. So when I decided to shift gears into therapy, it really was like, how do I use my powers for good? Instead of evil. And therapy just kind of felt like a natural fit. And I've really enjoyed working with all types of individuals and families. And my Volume Up coaching inspiration came because I wanted to do this parenting group so much. It's always been in the back of my mind to kind of help these parents. And I wanted to be able to create something that wasn't built under the umbrella or like locked into the states I'm licensed to.
Right.
So I'm licensed in New York, I'm licensed in Florida. And when I was thinking about this program, it was like, okay, well, are these, do you only want to help the people who are in New York? Do you only want to help the people in Florida? And I was like, absolutely not. I kind of dictate myself to be like the self-care queen. That's usually what my therapy style is all about. It's all about like how to find self-care and things like that. And I think it just naturally came to me to be, if I'm going to coach, then let's just coach like the people who will need it the most. And the first thing that came to mind was like parents. And then I had my friends who weren't parents who were just like, we also need self-care. And I said, girl, I got you. That'll be the next one. Like I've got you on my radar. But that's what the power of coaching does, is like anyone who's interested in doing that kind of work, now they can reach out to me one-on-one. So it's always beneficial. Like the skill sets are already there.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that story. And that's so cool that you're able to like expand into other markets and start to really help all kinds of people who maybe don't have immediate access to you because of where they live.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's one of the things that I've noticed a lot in regards to just therapy is they'll say, well, you're not covered by my insurance, so I can't see you.
Yeah.
I want to see you and but I'm not able to pay out of pocket at this time.
Yeah.
And so I think that with coaching, it really just opens it up to be able to say, all right, well, now we're really focusing in on your goals. What
Right.
is it that you want? And that's kind of how I do my therapy. It's very goal oriented. It's very much like, where are you at? Where do you want to be? How do we get there? So lots of like mixing of the same skill sets, but now more accessibility for sure
Yeah.
for anyone who's interested.
No, I love that. How did your own upbringing or girlhood shape your views on parenting and connection? What was that like for you?
Yeah. So I was raised practically by like a single mother, single Latin mom, hardworking. And my father was always in New York working, and my mom raised me pretty much in Florida on her own, along with my aunt. So womanhood and just being in that kind of environment with such powerful and strong women, my mom, my aunt, my grandmother, and eventually my sister who came later, definitely had such an impact on me as a woman. And my mom was always very encouraging to sort of chase your dreams. You have to chase your dreams, you have to work hard, and you have to want more. She would always tell me, like, Florida's fine, but the world is bigger. The world is bigger. You kind of got to get out there, which is what led me to California and, have that whole like television thing. And then I went to New York, went back to New York. I was born there and circled my way right back to Florida. But I think that in regards to like my parenting and the way that it's impacted me, I look back at some of the, behaviors that maybe I'm not necessarily proud of,
Right.
due to my frustration. I call it like that Latin heat, like we're very passionate, Courtney. We're very passionate people. We talk very loud and we talk very fast and we constantly have music in the background. It's like all of the things. I recognize that it's all our first time parenting. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So I look back at a lot of things that my mom did, and I look back at a lot of things that I did as a parent, and it just makes me recognize it's all of our first time,
Yeah.
doing anything, like whether it's parenting, it's our first time doing this job, it's our first time doing, this career move, it's our first time going to this school. It's always your first time in any stage of your womanhood. And so when you reflect, it's really interesting to be able to recognize, like, this is my first time being on a podcast. Like, you always have a lifetime of firsts. So
I love that you said that because I feel like it's so important to let yourself be new. Like something I always say to my clients is I always say the first time you do anything, it's going to be clunky, right? You're going to mess up, you're going to make mistakes, and you have to provide your own safety to make those mistakes because otherwise, how do you learn? How do you grow?
yeah,
My
absolutely. I
therapist
say it all
says
the time.
therapy.
That's exactly why they call it learning and not knowing.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And my therapist all the time when I was in therapy for a while with this therapist, she was great. I loved her, but she would always say, Courtney, you have to create spaces to purposefully make mistakes and know that
Mhm.
you're safe anyway. Because if you don't, then when the real time comes where you do make a mistake, you're going to go into that fight or flight mode. And everybody is new at different things at different times. And you have to learn to trust yourself, even when you mess up, and know that it's not catastrophic. That doesn't mean that you're not great at what you do. That doesn't mean that you can't grow. It doesn't mean you can't learn, but you have to see it as an opportunity and not as a failure.
Absolutely. I love that, and that's exactly where growth happens. Like we don't grow based off of our successes. We really grow based off of our failures. That's where
Yeah.
we learn how we can grow, how our levels are, what our limits are, what our boundaries are, and really challenging those. I think challenging excuses is just so important, and we have a lot of those, that stand in our way. And once I started challenging my excuses, I started to recognize, like, hey, you know
Mhm.
what? Like, yeah, I can do that. Yeah,
Yep.
there's no reason I may not do it well, but I can definitely do it.
You're going to get me on a soapbox, girl, because another thing I always say is support doesn't equal validation.
Yes,
And when
absolutely.
when you're having these trusted relationships, when you're like letting your ego get in the way of you making these mistakes, your community, if they are truly supporting you, their role in that is to hold you accountable, to be honest, to be kind.
Yes,
But there's
absolutely.
difference between being nice and being kind. And when we allow our excuses to get in the way and our ego to get in the way, we set ourselves up for failure.
Absolutely. I love that you say that too, because I always community is such an important component in regards to like our growth and even challenging sort of like the way that our upbringing was and what our sort of like values are. And I always warn people when they start with me, I'm like, I'm very direct, maybe sometimes to a fault, but always out of love. And I'm a very big believer in, mean what you say what you mean what you say, don't say it mean,
Right. I
you
love that.
know?
Love that because there's a difference in being honest and being accountable and being a dick. And some people
Yeah,
are just out here to be a dick.
absolutely, absolutely. It's like there's this sort of like anagram, not it's not an anagram, I forget what it's called, but it's called like think. I don't know if you know about this, but it says think, and then like the T stands for you ask yourself, is this true? And then
Hmm.
the H is this helpful? The
Yeah.
I is this inspiring? Is this necessary? And is this kind?
Hmm.
So it's like think. And if the answer is no to any of those, you keep your mouth shut.
I love that. Love that. That's such a straightforward way to like bring yourself back to center because how many times do we get in these like tough conversations and get so heated that we can't like get out of our own way and communicate what we're actually trying to effectively communicate in a
Hmm. Absolutely. I totally agree.
Yeah. Well, I feel like so many of us are learning to reparent ourselves right now. That's a big buzzword I'm seeing all around on social media, as well as this idea of like reparenting yourself, navigating adult friendships, dating, careers, etc. Why do you think, and what have you seen in your clients? Why is that work so hard? And then also, why is it so necessary?
Yeah. And reparenting is like that's definitely a true thing. We're constantly reparenting ourselves. So a few things are happening when it comes to like parents, right? Parents tend to project themselves onto their children,
Mm.
right? So there's something very fascinating that happens psychologically, right? When parents have a child and that child reaches a specific age, they begin to see a lot of themselves in their child at that age. So if I'm looking at my 13-year-old girl, I'm reacting and responding or projecting to her as if I'm my 13-year-old self.
Mm.
So I reparent her in the way that like I either experienced my life or so like those repetitive patterns. Or what happens is I reparent her in a way that I wanted or needed in that time.
Mm.
But ultimately what happens is that because I'm reparenting the self, I'm not parenting for who she is. Right.
Wow.
And so my daughter is very different from me, which my mother made sure to let me know years ago when I was like, she's just so shy and so quiet, and I don't know why she can't just go. And my mom, she was like, she's not you.
Yeah.
And it resonated so much because I was like, you know what? Here I am trying to sort of like instill something in her. That's not her. I'm missing it.
Yeah.
So reparenting yourself happens a lot with parents in a more natural kind of setting because we have this little human that we're seeing. And so it brings us back to a lot of places. It brings us back to like, what were my parents doing at this time? What relationships did I see? What did I need at that time? So it's very complex. When it comes to people like, young adults, right? People who are dating tend to repeat a lot of patterns or behaviors that, they were exposed to,
Yeah.
right, at those times, right? So, when they're younger or when they have like an understanding of what friendship is or what their relationships looked like, the brain loves to go towards what's familiar, right? Not necessarily what's comfortable, right? Or what you like. It always goes towards something that's familiar. So we all have like that girl who's like continuously dates like that toxic guy, or they continuously
Yes.
date that toxic person. And you're like, I don't know why she won't listen to me. Like, girl, like get out of your head. And what happens is that psychologically, let's say it's really fascinating. So let's say psychologically we have Jane, and Jane is in a relationship with this scumbag, and he's just toxic and he's terrible. Well, now Jane has gotten really accustomed, whether it's from her childhood or whatever. We don't even have to go like that deep, but 9 times out of 10, it usually happens in that way, past relationships or something. So Jane's in this relationship with this guy, and they're very toxic, but they get together, and then all of a sudden somebody gets into an argument. Right. So now they get into this fight. So he's going to say something, she's going to say something. They're going to end up, like going their own separate ways and be like, oh, I'm mad at you, I'm mad at you. They give each other the silent treatment, right? So now they're in this silent period where nobody's talking to each other, but everybody's mad. Then what happens is at some point in time in the cycle, somebody softens. Right. Somebody tries to break the ice. So he says something, she says something. Now that somebody is softened, it's like, okay, you know what? We're kind of like warmed up again. Right. So now we're back into this honeymoon period where it's just like, you know what? I forgive you. Everything is fine. We're back on track. Everything is going good. And then all of a sudden, till the next fight. Oh my gosh, now he's going to say something. She's going to say something. We're going to break off. Everybody's going to give each other the cold shoulder. And so on and so forth goes the cycle, right? So when Jane is no longer with said scumbag, right? And she meets Mr. Wonderful, and he's great, right? And she's just like, oh, this is great. We're in this honeymoon period, right? Like everything is going so great. It's so wonderful. He's so awesome. Wait, we're not fighting. Wait, what's happening? You know what? Are you going to wear that shirt? Yeah, I'm going to wear this shirt. Okay. Oh, you don't want me to wear that shirt? That's fine, babe. No problem. Oh, you're going to go hang out with the boys again? It's like, yeah, I don't have to if you don't want to. I'm totally fine. Like everything is great, right? And then it's just like, well, oh, we're gonna have to go and do this again. We're gonna have to watch this game again, and then it's so we start poking the bear, right? We start poking the bear, and Mr. Wonderful finally says, "Girl, what's your problem? Like, why are you being so difficult?" And it's just like, there it is. Like, great. Now I'm gonna explode so that he explodes, so that way I know where I am. Right. And so now I know that he's going to blow up. I'm going to blow up, but it's all right because I know where I am. I know where I am. Like now, one of us is going to end up warming up. And then eventually we're going to get back into the space where we're in this honeymoon period. And so because the brain goes towards what's familiar, right? If it feels really uncomfortable, like we don't know what to do with peace when we don't have peace, right? And so not that we enjoy this negative component, right? It's just that the brain doesn't like being uncomfortable and not knowing what's happening next. And so we don't know what to do with peace. And so it's like anxiety inducing, but we know how to fight.
Feels safe and that feels comfortable because it's a chaos that we can control.
Exactly.
That idea of like you go through something really traumatic and then you find something slightly less traumatic but still chaos inducing,
Yeah.
but that feels safe because you know chaos and you thrive in chaos and you can control that chaos because it's less chaotic than the trauma you just dealt with. And instead of genuinely getting into it and like dealing with that trauma, you're like, well, I can control this. I can control that chaos. I can finagle it and manage it. Over here, these are real feelings. I don't want to tap deep into those. Can't control how I feel, can't control what emotions come out. So people look for that chaos and that lack of safety. I mean, I did it when my own parents got divorced.
Mm,
And thankfully, I didn't end up in anything super, super toxic. But that is, I was looking for constant validation, constant need for approval from
mhm.
friends, from partners, in every avenue I could possibly find them. And it wasn't until I was able to step outside of myself and realize, maybe I need to stop aligning myself with different authorities and start leaning into my own voice and like genuinely listening to it. That I realized that for so many years of my life, I was living as a like idea of myself and not as my actual self, because you thrive in that chaos, you thrive in that safety that you create.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And good for you for doing that work too, because it is very, very difficult for somebody to, first and foremost, identify something is wrong, identify something I want to change, then be willing to do the work to
Yeah.
be different, and so frequently I'll work with people and they'll say, I'm trying. I really am. I'm really trying, but it's not working. And I'll say, you know what? I hear like you want change. I hear that you really truly want change, but I also hear that you don't want to be different. And you can't change without being different. And
Yeah.
so the moment that you become different and you decide, I'm being different, then that's where the change really happens. We can desire change all that we want, but until we're going to be different, then it's all for naught.
Well, and what does that look like? That looks like taking ownership of your own story. It looks like understanding. I hate the phrase everything happens for a reason, because I think that's incredibly invalidating to your
Mhm.
emotions, experiences, everything like that. I do believe that everything can be worked for good. I do believe that everything can be redeemed for good. You talk about the butterfly effect. This has come up in pretty much every single podcast I've had so far. But your story and the things that you go through shape who you are, and they matter. And until you can be honest with yourself about those things, good, bad, messy, whatever, like you said, until you're willing to be different, until you're willing to be vulnerable, until you're willing to risk it, you're not going to change. You're going to stay stagnant. You're going to stay in the mess. You're going to stay in the chaos you've created for yourself because it feels safe.
Yeah. And I think I always encourage people to think like, how can I use this? How will I use this? Because we can use it to stay in the same place, or we can use it to align ourselves to making some changes and doing things in a different way. When we go through those breakups, it's like, what am I taking with me? You
Mm.
know what I mean? I don't have to take all of it, but what am I cherry picking from these things so that I know moving forward, what am I taking from that failed friendship?
Mm.
What am I taking forward? So that way I can recognize it in the future and truly identify what helps me, what's hurting me, and most of the time when people hold on to things, they'll hold on to some kind of pain, they'll hold on to some kind of restriction, they'll hold on to it. I'll ask them, I'm like, what's purpose is it serving you? And they're like, oh, well, it's not really serving anything. And I'm like, no, it's serving a purpose. You're holding on to it for a reason.
Yep.
So if you can identify what the purpose is, then you can identify whether or not you need it. Sometimes we hold on to pain because we think like, I've got to hold on to this pain, because if I don't hold on to my anger against you, then that means that I've forgiven you. That means I'm not safe. Someone is going to hurt me again. Right. And it's just like, well, can you recognize that someone may hurt you again without holding on to this pain? So that way you're prepared for that new pain when it comes
Someone
along.
will very likely hurt you again.
Absolutely. Acceptance is the key. Like, yes, you will probably get hurt again. No, there is no world without anxiety, right? I I always tell people like the people in my years of working that I know for a fact that have like zero anxiety, that have managed to have zero anxiety are dead people.
Hmm.
They have nothing to worry about. They have nothing to worry about,
Yeah.
But for as long as you have something you care about. Anxiety always attaches to the things you value most. And so if you don't care about the cat down the street. You're not staying up at night worrying if whether or not he got hit by a car, unless you love cats and you are worried about your neighbors, the cat down the street. I'm not wishing anything bad to happen to the
Right.
cat. But, you're not concerned about that. You're concerned about like, why didn't these friends invite me to go out?
Mhm.
You're concerned about like what if somebody is mad at me? What if I don't do well at work? What if I don't end up finding that partner? What if my parents get divorced? What if I'm not a good mom? Right? Oh, you care about those things. And so that's why anxiety lives there, because it only attaches to the things that you value the most. So for as long as you have something to care about, that's the good news. You'll be anxious.
I
There's
love
something, you've got something that you care about.
Congratulations. You
There
cared
you go.
about something. Yeah, I feel like, again, healing, that's such a buzzword on social media. It's a powerful word. It has impact, it has meaning. People love this idea of healing, but they don't love the work.
Right. Right. And that I think is just synonymous with the society that we live with, instant gratification, right? And not sitting in discomfort. Because if I don't like this, I just move on to the next. And if I don't like this, then I just move on to the next. And, if I don't like this person, then I don't need them anymore. I'm going to move on to the next. But I think that with the work that I've done with people where they recognize they can sit in that discomfort and they can grow into that confidence, and then they have that knowing of, it doesn't matter what situation I'm in.
Right.
I'm good. You know, then there's less things to sort of heal from. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Like you don't heal from the outside in. There's a lot of people who are just like, I'm waiting for this person to give me closure. We give away a lot of our power that way. we
Yep.
we say, like, when they do this, then I will. When they do this, then I'll feel. But that's just relinquishing so much of your power, and being able to say, you know what, I forgive myself for allowing that to happen. I forgive myself and I learn. And the next time I'm going to be able to, recognize that. And if I don't end up recognizing that, I'm going to trust that if I can go through that experience and come out on the other end, and I know now what I know then, because when we know better, we do better. It probably won't be.
No, again, ownership, taking ownership of your own story, of your own choices, and leaning into the full truth of what that story is. I think that's so powerful. And I love, love, love that you shared that. I want to move on to talking about self-regulation. I see you talk a lot about how yelling is often a symptom and not a strategy. And we kind of touched on this a couple minutes ago when we were talking about the cycles you were just sharing about. But can you walk us through what's really happening in those moments?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that when we get angry, right, and that anger emotion, I think what's important to remember is that anger is not a primary emotion, right? Anger is a secondary emotion.
Yes.
We can't really do anything with anger. We are typically angry because of something. So, since anger doesn't live alone, we are usually angry because we are frustrated. We're angry because we are overwhelmed. We're angry because we feel disrespected. We're angry because we're hungry. That's why angry comes in, right? So, I can't really do anything about anger. But what I can do something if I'm feeling overwhelmed. If I'm feeling overwhelmed, then I can be like, I've got too much going on. I need to take a step back. If I'm getting frustrated, I can say, I'm okay, I'm feeling super frustrated. Maybe now's not the time for me to do this. If I'm hungry, girl, I'm gonna go get something to eat. I gotta get something to eat, something in my
Right.
belly to help me, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to, like, parents, right? Parents typically yell. It's usually not because they want to. They're usually just overwhelmed, or they're overstimulated, or they haven't met their needs. Stress, exhaustion, they're feeling out of control. It's like a nervous system response. So anger isn't, it's not really like a strategy, right? And I think that in those moments, it's important to also recognize that your brain is just in that fight or flight mode. You're just trying to get past it. You're just trying to, like, make it stop or get going. And so yelling really feels like it's the only way to be heard,
Yeah.
because you haven't really given yourself the quiet enough within yourself to process, like, how is this going to come out? What is that core emotion? Let me satiate that need first, because if I'm overwhelmed, then maybe now isn't the right time for me to have a whole conversation. Maybe it's time for me to rest.
Mhm.
If I haven't eaten, maybe we can do this conversation after I've had something, and then I can decide whether or not it's even that important
Yeah.
to get back to, because sometimes everything feels so much bigger. So I think that's why it's really important to sort of recognize the root of where your trigger is, because once you identify what that core emotion is and what that root is, you can do something about that
Yep.
versus focusing on, I just don't want to get angry. And it's just like, well, girl, why are you getting angry? And even in that vein, I would say that there are people who come back and it's just like, well, people make me mad. she makes me so mad. He makes me so mad. And I'm just like, girl, nobody makes you anything.
Yeah, you got to own your own feelings. You can feel whatever you want, but guess what? You're responsible for those feelings.
Yeah, because they came out of you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like they didn't put it in you, right?
Mm.
They came out of you. That was your response. That was your reaction. And so once we begin to choose how we react or respond to people, that makes a big difference. So if I can choose to react or respond a certain way, then I can choose to recognize like I'm angry. I don't need to do anything right now. I need to figure out what's happening underneath this anger. I need to figure out what's happening with this yelling. I think what's daunting for people is they feel that it's going to take up so much time.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, well, I don't have time to figure out why I'm angry. I'm just mad. I don't have time because they need to get out the door. I don't have time because I've got to finish this. Right. And I think that usually just becomes something that's excusable because we feel like our time is precious, but it's like, so you don't want to invest 3.5 to 5 minutes in yourself to
Right.
feel proud of yourself in 10 minutes. They've done these studies where emotions typically last anywhere between 7 to 9 minutes before the brain has to move on into the next emotion. So if you don't have 7 to 9 minutes for yourself to wait that out,
It's a bigger problem.
that's a problem. You know what I mean? That's a problem. And that's really all you need because you really need anywhere between 7 to 9 minutes to be like, I'm feeling this feeling of anger. If I wait this 7 to 9 minutes, if I give myself permission to take 7 to 9 minutes to wait it out, I might be on the other end of this in a much better space.
Yeah. Well, and what happens if you don't? If you don't, then you're just repressing those feelings. And guess what? They're going to resurface. They're going to come more powerful. They're going to escalate into way worse or terrible reactions that you weren't wanting to have. And if you had just gotten your ego out of the way and said, let me be vulnerable for a second, let me sit with this discomfort for a second, let me tap into why I'm feeling this way, you'd be addressing the problem head on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is, I feel like I'm talking about everything you're saying. I'm like, yes, like this is, let's get into it. This is my stuff. What do you think emotional wellness does look like for the overwhelmed woman? Talking about overwhelm and all of that, those people who don't have those 7 to 9 minutes, what do you think they need to start incorporating?
Yeah, I think for emotional wellness, it's important to just recognize that it doesn't mean that you have it all together. I think that people have this understanding or this delusion and illusion, thanks to social media, that, everything is easy. And that if everything is not easy, then all of a sudden it means everything is hard. You know
Right.
what I mean? Or everything is, and I'll hear clients say that all the time that it's so hard. It's so hard. I'm like, it's not fucking hard. It's
Amen.
challenging. It's challenging.
Amen.
Like, if you say it's hard, then that's it. You're done. It's finished. You know what I mean? There's nowhere to go. If you say this is challenging, you've got room. You've got room to breathe.
Yep.
It's challenging to lift weights. You can do it. It just takes a little bit more time. If you just say it's hard, you're never lifting a weight. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that for emotional wellness, it really just means knowing how to check with yourself, name what you're feeling, give
Yes.
yourself permission to slow down when it's needed. Emotional wellness looks like setting boundaries without guilt, right? Women, especially, we have a hard time with that, setting boundaries without guilt because we're supposed to be everything to everyone, right? And asking for help. We don't do that either. So that's what emotional wellness looks like, having tools to just manage your stress, like you said, giving yourself a moment to manage your stress before it turns into burnout, before it turns into a blow up. It's not really about being perfect. It's
Yeah.
just about regulation, awareness, support. All of those things is what emotional wellness means.
Yeah. And I feel like so much of that comes back to honesty. Like so many people want to be so like, you have to be completely honest with me. If you're not honest with me, we can't like, we can say that to other people, but then we don't do that with ourselves. And I don't know if it's because that honesty requires vulnerability. It requires us to dig deeper. It requires us to think beyond that, like you said, that instant gratification culture. But we have got to start pushing ourselves into those challenging spaces so that we can communicate effectively, not just with the world around us, but with ourselves.
Yeah. I think that we have a tendency, and many people do this, and this is where I try to help people is we see ourselves as one, see ourselves as the self. We don't necessarily see ourselves as the roles that we play.
Yeah.
And so we don't distinguish the needs like my friends who used to work with me, like when I was working at, at Disney or, in retail or whatever, they would be like, I don't like work, Cindy. Work, Cindy is not a good time. She is
Mhm.
demanding, she is bossy, she is all of the things. My friends at Disney probably didn't say that. They would probably just be like, "Oh man, Cindy's gonna get in trouble. She's climbing a tree today in costume." That was that was my gig.
Right.
But I think that we don't embrace the roles that
Mm.
we have. And we are mothers and we are sisters and we are friends, right?
Yeah.
And we are teachers and we are mentors, and we are so many things. And so, since we look at ourselves as the self, right, we can't really distinguish what that self needs because we're too close to it. But
Mm.
the moment that I say, okay, Mom Cindy, she needs a fucking break.
Period.
Mom Cindy needs a break. So Mom Cindy can't sit down and do this right now. Work Cindy she's got something she needs to do, right? And so if I just let work Cindy do this thing for the next 30 minutes, then she's going to shut the fuck up and she's going to let Mom Cindy do what she needs to do
I
later,
love that.
right?
I
You
love
know,
that so much.
Yeah, because then it allows us to alleviate this idea that we need to encompass the body with all of these different mindsets all in one place. It's
Yeah.
just like, well, no, hold on a second. Who am I? What am I trying to be right now? Okay, I'm trying to be in work mode right now. And my girls are going out. You know what I mean? And my work self is really upset because I'm so frustrated because I've got all these things, and I'm starving and I have all this work that's happening and I've got all these things and like my fun side wants to go out and have a good time. You know what? How do I balance my self-care self? Like, okay, like work me needs to go out. That's what work me needs. She
Yeah.
needs a break because work me will be here tomorrow. She's going to clock in,
Right.
right? So sometimes having that visualization of creating a relationship with yourself, but that separate self is so important. And there was something really interesting that resonated with me that my sister shared with me, which was the idea of the relationship of yourself in regards to friendship. And when we look at friendship, right, when we are friends with someone, right, and we're good friends, we pick up the phone when they call, we take them to the airport when they need, we show up for them. We're consistent. We keep our promises to that friend,
Yep.
which makes us a good friend, which allows us to have a good relationship with them. And so frequently we neglect the friendship that we have with ourselves.
Well, yeah.
We, so we don't keep promises to ourselves. I'll start the diet Monday.
Yep.
Right? I'll start the diet Monday. I'm going to start working. I'm going to drink more water. I'm going to work less. I'm going to yell less. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to do it on Monday. In the meantime, it's like Monday comes along and you don't do the thing. And now it's a broken promise. And so we treat her the way that we would any other friend, which is just like,
Yeah.
listen, I love that girl. I love the bitch, but don't have her take you to the airport. Don't tell her
Right.
to take it. She's not reliable. She's not going to show up. That's what happens is we don't keep those friendships aligned. We don't keep those promises to ourselves. And so when we decide that we're going to do something, we don't trust that we're going to do it. We don't
Yep.
believe in ourselves. We don't
Yep.
think that we're going to come follow through because why? Because we don't keep our promises. But the magical thing is when you decide to keep those promises to that self or any other self that you might own, wow, what a good friendship that comes up. You know what I mean? What confidence level comes up, which is like, you know what? Oh, yeah, I think I'm going to start on Monday. And I know that I'm going to start on Monday. In fact, I'm not even going to start on Monday. I'm going to start right now. Why do I
Yep.
have to wait until Monday to have a glass of water, even though it's Friday? I'm going to have a glass of water right now. I'm going to replace it right now. Why do I have to wait until Monday to do this stretch? Why do I have to wait until Monday to start like this new choice, and do this?
When you wouldn't wait till Monday if somebody else was asking you to wait.
Exactly. Because if your friend called you and they were just like, hey, it's Friday night and, I want to go out, but I can't drink and I can't eat anything. I can't eat gluten. I've got to go to this new place. You'd be like, girl, I'll be right there.
Right.
I'll go with you. I'll keep you company. No problem.
Yeah.
Right.
But you don't do that for yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. So good. That was, yes. You're like speaking to my soul. These are all that I love. I want to transition more to talking back about your like coaching and everything like that. So volume up coaching. Tell me about how music inspired your coaching and why joy and rhythm matter so much in parenting and everyday life.
I love talking about this. I love it. Okay, so music has been such a big part of my life. So I grew up, well, first and foremost, I grew up in a Latin household. So we had music all the time, like when we're cleaning in the house, always in the background, music, music, music. And I was a dancer from a very small age, ballerina, worked into high school and, then shows and parades at Disney. And, I've just always had an incredible love of music. And because I was like this dancer theater kid growing up and, choreographing and stuff, like every song that I hear is really like a soundtrack of my life. And it's all about like it brings me to like hanging with my friends, in school or college. It takes me to the place like the songs that we sang in the break room when I worked at Disney, the songs they played at my wedding, what I danced to at the gym, like even the ones that like my kids like, it all has meaning to me. Like music is just so powerful. And I think even in like helping my clients, like improving their lives, I always feel like we just need to find the right rhythm and
Yeah.
we just need to be able to like mix it up at times, and just to like be able to enjoy, to be able to grieve, to be able to celebrate, and music is just such a powerful kind of tool for that. And so that's really where, when I came up with volume up coaching, I just really wanted to incorporate my love for music and the power that it comes and sort of like that nostalgic vibe of like this music transports you into like emotional states. Like
Yeah.
there's a Pink Floyd song that reminds me of my father-in-law, and he passed away several years ago. But every time I hear it, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I remember, like it's just a flood of memories. That's really what inspired me to call it volume up, to like turn up the volume and
Yeah.
just kind of incorporate music with it.
Love that. I was a theater kid. I was a debate nerd. So everything you're saying is really resonating with me. My favorite thing to do is go to concerts. I will
Mhm.
literally leave the state or the country to go to certain shows. So like what you're saying, absolutely. One of the activities I do in my group coaching is I have my clients make a playlist of 5 songs that they would say describe their life and talk about it. Yeah, so I'm like really resonating with what you're saying. I think that's so cool.
Vibe. It's
Yeah.
such a vibe.
And music really does move and heal, like in so many ways, depending on the genre that you find, you're gonna find your own like sense of community and peace and healing and that. I'm a big Swiftie and I'm also a big emo music girly, so I love
Mhm.
both. But it really I love that you're talking about that because as somebody who is a theater kid who loves music, and I know a lot of my clients really do as well, that's something I feel like really connects with people and isn't something that is often talked about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's such a source of identity too, right? Like, I remember it was really interesting when I was in my younger years and I was dating and going through high school and college and stuff. I very much molded into whatever it was that my partner liked. So I remember like I dated this guy and he was Jamaican. So I was really into reggae music at the time. I dated a guy in high school and he was really into like, Spanish reggaeton, music. And so then I started listening to that. And I dated a guy and he was into Pearl Jam. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm really into this. And then I met my husband and he liked the most god awful music. He he liked this Courtney. He liked he liked this like he's like from Worcester, Massachusetts, like Boston, and he's just like he liked this rah rah yelling metal like rah, music like no beat. And I just remember when I met him and he introduced me to that kind of music, and I was like, I don't like that.
My gosh.
But it was so powerful It was such a transformative time because it forced me to think about what I like.
Hmm.
I no longer had that, oh, I like what you like kind of partner. And so it was such a different challenge. And so then I was just like, well, do I actually like pop? Yes, I do like pop. And I like Eminem. And I also like, the theater music. And I also like Disney songs. And I love Christmas music, and do I like country music? I'm not sure if I like country music. I do like, sure. Yeah, I like it. And it was just so powerful. And so what you're
Yeah.
saying about music being very transformative and very telling, it's just at the core of identity. And I think that when we're able to sort of tap into that, it really allows us to be able to express ourselves in just different ways that can truly be really freeing.
It's so funny because you describing that rah-rah music, like that is some of the stuff that I listen to. Like I can already picture it. I almost had a similar but opposite experience. Like I spent so much of my time in college just masking and minimizing and pretended I didn't like that stuff to like meet the friends that I wanted to meet. And then it was amazing all of a sudden when I started coming back into myself and doing my own work, it was like, no, I actually do like pop punk music and I do like going to these concerts and I do like the rah rah music, even if everybody else is like, what the hell is that? I love it and I found community in it. And so I'm so with you. Like, I feel like it gives us this unique lens and this unique door to really start to think about what is it that I like? What is it that I need? How can I find myself even in just this one thing?
Absolutely. It's such an important step to find the self. And that's really where everything gets started, anyways.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, this has been just an amazing conversation. I've had the best time talking to you, Cindy. I want to give you the opportunity to kind of let my clients know, let my audience know, like what it is that you're doing, how they can get involved, how they can support you, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, thank you. I've had a wonderful time too. This is great. I love when like kindred spirits meet, and it just kind of all resonates. And this has been fantastic. And I thought I was like, I'm going to be a blubbering mess, and this is just fantastic to be able to just talk about things that we're truly passionate about and
Yeah.
align on. So I just appreciate your time and everything. In regards to finding me, my therapy is called My Best Self Therapy. You can find me on Instagram or you can go to my website, mybestselftherapy.com. And for any parents who are interested in that parenting support group that's got that sort of 90s, 2000 nostalgic kickback vibe, you can find me at Volume Up Coaching. That's my Instagram handle, and also Volume Up Coaching, which is my website. So very easy. I keep it nice and simple. So if you want to find me, those are the two places. And in regards to sort of being involved, I think that what I would probably encourage everybody to do is just really ask yourself, what are some of your goals? Really align yourself with what are some of your goals that you want to accomplish? How do you get there? And don't be afraid to ask for support. There are lots of communities and people out there to help you. Therapy is not a four-letter word. It's really a space to be able to invite you to explore who that is, what it is that you want, and make valuable change. And I think that's why community is so important to me. So to be able to provide both, to work with individuals through therapy or to work through with individuals through coaching or parents as a group is just it's a very humbling experience for me to be in service for anybody who wants to be supported. Uh, Anybody who really thinks that that's what they want, I encourage. And I always say, even if you don't land on my desk, like reach out. I am dedicated to help everybody to get to their next sort of
Yeah.
therapeutic step. Because once you've decided, like, hey, I want to be different, but I don't really know like what questions I have for therapy, like please don't hesitate to reach out. Please don't hesitate to DM me. Please don't hesitate to be like, I'm talking to this therapist or talking to me about CBT and ACT therapy. I have no idea what that is. Girl, just text me. Like just message me, DM me. I will help you figure that out because you want to find the right fit, whether it's through therapy or coaching. You want to be able to find somebody who gets your vibe, tells it to you the like it is, really aligns with what you want. So that's probably what I would leave all of your audience with. If they decide to change, just get out there and just get started.
Yeah, be different. I'm going to take that into my week. This has been just the best conversation ever. I've truly enjoyed connecting with you, Cindy, and we will look forward to seeing you guys next week. Have a great week.
Bye.